the hell up, and our nation will be strong.
Hello, welcome to Civilization Jihad Awareness, the show where truth wins every time, and the news is not hidden. Today, you're going to hear some shocking things. You're going to sit there and wonder, how is it possible for this to happen in the United States? Well, some of this is simply happening because of pure laziness, and we're going to be getting into that. Some of the news that I'm going to be getting into later is just because of sheer evil. But if you listen in today, you're going to have your mind blown. But let's get into the name of this show. It is called Civilization Jihad Awareness. Civilization Jihad is not a term I created. It's a term created by the Muslim Brotherhood to describe their war against North America. We know this because of one document discovered in 2004, thanks to the work of one Maryland transit officer. We owe him a great debt of thanks, as we do all the law enforcement officers out there, but it is they who are the first line of defense, and we owe them a debt that can never be paid. This one officer doing his job caught a woman taking pictures of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge support structure. Thank God he did. He pulled over a gentleman who was driving the car. His name was Ismail Abrace. He was wanted by the FBI for questioning. They served a search warrant on his house. They found a hidden, dug-out sub-basement. It's like second basement we're talking about, with 93 bankers' boxes of documents of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is in the United States, people. Let me just read one paragraph from one document called the Explanatory Memorandum that was discovered. It says this: the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion, Allah's religion, is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? As I said, it's not something I created. It is something the Muslim Brotherhood created. And it is a little scary when you start to think about a foreign entity coming here and setting this up. We should be very aware. Cathy Hinners is one of those people that is very aware. She is a decorated retired police officer from Albany, New York, where she patrolled for 20 years. Prior to retirement, she participated in Intel Liaison Division while she was active in the emerging Middle Eastern Muslim community. Based upon this experience, she developed a course on Middle Eastern crime, culture, and community, which she's delivered to thousands of law enforcement officers across the country. Cathy was an SAIC contract instructor with U.S. Department of Homeland Security Center for Domestic Preparedness in Anniston, Alabama, where she delivered mobile training to National Guard, New York Police Department, and other law enforcement agencies on weapons of mass destruction and bomb recognition. Along with presenting to groups and organizations across Tennessee, Cathy regularly exposes Muslim Brotherhood individuals and their activities, as well as advising state legislators and officials on their incursion. In June of 2015, Cathy was named, this is one of the honorary things that Cathy has, she was named by the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, along with 11 other women that speak out against the implementation of Sharia law. Oh, telling the truth about Sharia law is a hate crime now. Did you know that? You ever think about that? Telling the truth? So, Cathy, you are honored for telling the truth. It's a great, great honor. On September 26, 2015, Cathy participated in a panel led by retired General Jerry Boykin, on the Islamic threat, Women Who Know the Truth, the latest to make the SPLC's hate list, which was held at the Value Voters Summit in Washington, D.C., a place where I'm hoping to be speaking in the near future. Cathy is the author of Muslim Brotherhood, The Threat in Our Backyard, available on Amazon. And she's also the founder of Daily Roll Call, and she's a regular guest on the Michael Del Giorno. I'm going to say welcome, Cathy. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Did I pronounce that correctly? Is it Del Giorno?
Del Giorno, yes.
Del Giorno. Okay.
Yes.
I want to make sure I say that right. Everybody deserves to have their name said right. I'm one of those people that don't enjoy when people say my name wrong, but it's funny because my name is heard differently all the time. I loved your article. I was impressed with your level of research. And then as I looked at your research, and it just kept hitting me. Where was the research of the guys who started this insane concept? So I'm just going to get into the questions I have so you can scare everybody with the truth. The Nashville Police Department that I sent letters to listen to this show, I hope you're listening. Because we'll be shocked about the ineptness of whoever does vetting there. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
your article, Nashville Police Schooled on Islam at Radical Mosque is pretty revealing. I think it's something when I hear about a public school making a decision to do a lesson that promotes Islam, but a law enforcement training facility teaching cadets, especially one religion over another. I have so many questions about this before we get into how no, this is not a place to trust, but how did you learn about this happening?
Well, like you said, Daily Roll Call is my website, Paul, but we are also a small group of retired military and law enforcement officers, as well as a couple of research and some counterintelligence people. So we learn about these events through various contexts, whether it's a community member or their social media, and then there are some methods which I can't discuss, but all the info is vetted, and if it was proven accurate and correct, then we publish and expose it.
I'm just kind of mind numb that a law enforcement agency would do this. Do you know if this is an established policy of Nashville Police Department or how long this has been going on?
I don't know if it's an actual policy regarding the specifics on where cadets can, get their different aspects of training, but I do believe their curriculum meets what's called the state post standards, which all police officers have to meet, with hours of training, both while in the academy and then through service. So we've been documenting this particular training since I think it was December of 2015 was the first time that we noticed it.
Wow. So this has been going on for 4 years.
A couple times a year. Yeah. Yep. If not longer.
So how many classes does that mean? How many classes have gone through then?
Oh gosh, it's a fairly large police department, so I'm not sure. By date of pictures, it looks like 2 times a year, but they are it's fairly large, so they probably do run an academy a little more often.
That is even more scary to think that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The Islamic Center of Nashville, otherwise called ICN, must have set warning bells off in your head. For those of you who do not know, when you hear the term Islamic Center or Islamic Society of whatever, it's one of those things that tells you it's affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, you started your expose on the mosque by reminding me about Cat Stevens' conversion. I love Cat Stevens. I've loved his music. It makes me sad every time I hear that.
I know.
Cathy, tell us why Cat Stevens' influence on this mosque is important.
Well, unfortunately, it is the same. It's not the same Cat Stevens, that we grew up with. All these wonderful peace trains and things. He's off the deep end now, but we do know that he converted back in 1977. His new name now is Yusuf Islam. The ICN, which I'll refer to it as ICN if you're okay with that rather than
Yes, please do.
time. They received from him a donation of over $17,000 back in the late 90s to pay back taxes, but it was also to buy the adjacent property, which is where they are currently. The problem with this is his association with a group called the British Relief Fund for Lebanon and Palestine, which at the time he was raising thousands of dollars for Hamas. And for those that might not be aware, Hamas is a terrorist organization designated within this country. So it's alive and well, but it shouldn't be. So the other group, he was also doing another fundraising event for Hamas called the Muslim Council of Britain. Now, he was the treasurer of that, and the chairperson was a documented al-Qaeda operative. So at that point, Stevens was banned from entering the United States. And now, he's getting older, and it may seem his relationships are no longer in existence. However, people have to understand that his ideology and stance for Hamas, it hasn't diminished. The philosophies that he had then are just as strong and are growing now. As for the ICN being a Muslim Brotherhood entity, we have records that show them having the same address as the financial arm of a group called the Islamic Society of North America, which is the Muslim Brotherhood's largest organization here in this country. The financial arm of ISNA is called the North American Islamic Trust. A vast majority of the mosques in the U.S. are owned and operated by these organizations. And so we know that the ICN is owned and operated by the Muslim Brotherhood.
And if just to throw this out there, the ISNA was created by the Muslim Student Association. They shared locations, and one of the things we learn about when we talk about Muslim Brotherhood organizations is this concept of incestuous relationships, because they'll share locations, they'll share offices, they'll share officers. So it's important to understand that when we're talking about the Islamic Center and we're talking about ISNA and Nate, they're going to be sharing personnel and affiliations as well. So it's a little bit more complex than you usually expect. If you're talking about a Christian organization, they don't usually share the same location as something else. And we kind of find that important in general, but apparently it's not important to them. Ms. Hinners, your work, wow, you got through Nate really quick. I was amazed with that stuff there. Ms. Hinners, your work is so thorough. Were you embarrassed for the department with what your research developed? I mean, you found this guy named Carlos Bledsoe.
Mm-hmm.
Why should it matter to the Nashville Police Department that he attended that mosque?
Well, first, my purpose was to embarrass them, but you know what? At this point, maybe that's not a bad thing. But my purpose.
No, I meant, were you embarrassed for them? Not to embarrass them. Were you embarrassed for them?
Oh, absolutely. My purpose is to expose and to educate, and they don't really seem to be getting it. It's out there. But Carlos Bledsoe was a student at the University of Tennessee at Nashville. Back in June of 2009, he just shot and killed 2 uniformed Army troops in front of their recruiting center in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm sure many people remember that. Bledsoe had actually attended the ICN when he chose to convert to Islam, and then he named himself after the imam at that time. His name was Abdul Hakim Mujahid Muhammad. So they sent Carlos to Yemen under the guise of learning Arabic and being proficient enough to come back and teach other students how to do that. He was arrested. I don't know what he was arrested for in Yemen, but then he was returned to Nashville, and then this is where he had pretty much, it was described as rage against American soldiers for the persecution of Muslims in the Middle East. So that is why he went and killed two of our soldiers at their Army recruiting center. What's interesting is that there is a documentary called Losing Our Sons, and I would just urge everyone to watch it, especially people that live in Tennessee and Nashville specifically. But the dad of Carlos, his name is Melvin Bledsoe. He's in Memphis. And I have reached out to Mr. Bledsoe to get his opinion and thoughts on what is happening with, police cadets at this mosque where his son was radicalized. I have not been able to get him at this point, but I am hoping to have an interview with him at some point. But it's really important for people to understand that people are being radicalized at the ICN. Maybe not to this level where they go and kill someone, but this is the mentality and the ideology that is spread at any of these Muslim Brotherhood mosques. And so, therefore, I kind of find it inappropriate that we have, police officers whose minds are being shaped, learning from this kind of an institution.
It's that to me is a mind blower. And we're talking multiple classes. I mean, it would have been something if it was one time, but I mean,
it's crazy.
I mean, this is going on long enough that there's really no excuse that they wouldn't know at this point.
No, and you know what, Paul? As a former instructor for law enforcement, I find that having to learn about a particular religion, which they encompass culture into that as well. But what they're not doing the police a great service, because when I was an instructor, what I taught was how to interview and interrogate Muslims. They're very different. You can't have a man interview a woman. I taught them what to look for when you go into Middle Eastern run stores. I told them how to break down their names. It's very important to understand what the different words in their name structure is. And so, these are things that police need to know, how to communicate within that community. And these are the things that I'm finding are lacking. And so it's really all about Muslims and how the police can serve them rather than helping, the police community themselves.
That's exactly. They don't seem to understand that's the purpose, and I guess that's what bothers me the most about this.
Yeah.
You developed a purpose that was very specific, and they seem to have taken it and, I would say, broadened it to the point of insanity. As I'm looking through some of the stuff that it seems that they've done, but let me go back to this question because I know I'm kind of going to lose track. I'm in my questions I write, they seem to be caught napping. And I say, how do you miss this? And I mean, this is the thing that gets me. When I read your article, to me it was mind numbing, and that's why I contacted you. I probably read it later than some people, but I mean, this attack with Carlos, it's not even 10 years old. It's crazy. I mean, it's not yet 10 years old. It's a 20-something child in charge of a diversity project in the Nashville Police Department. Maybe he wouldn't know. That's the only thing I can come up with an excuse, but this has been going on a while, so it shouldn't be a 20-something child. I mean, maybe it could be. Maybe that would explain it. It's kind of hard to. Are you aware of who did this questionable vetting or made this decision? Or
well, I think a lot of it, the Metro Police Department is run by a really nice man. His name is Steve Anderson. I have been told that he has been personally informed of my work and activities, that go on at the ICN, and its relationship certainly with nefarious organizations and individuals. But he has been called out on many occasions, on the talk radio that I do on a weekly basis. It's in writing. I mean, he's well aware as far as I know. But my guess is currently right now in Nashville there is an uber liberal mayor, and there's also right now an election going on with candidates that tend to be leaning just as liberal. But I just think that the mayor himself calls the Muslim community vulnerable and disenfranchised. So pretty much, a chief does what the mayor wants him to do, and our mayor is extremely involved in events that take place at the ICN. He is there at a lot of different functions. And so with the climate as it is, with the left-leaning, Nashville is kind of pushing towards being a sanctuary city. This is the mindset of the leadership of Nashville. And so I think that, for political correctness reasons and not wanting to be labeled an Islamophobe. Being labeled can cost you your pension, certainly. So there's a lot of different politically correct reasons I think this is happening. But, as a retired police officer, I don't understand the inability to vet their own information. That I think is kind of appalling. And this is where we're at, talking about it.
And I think that's the point that really hits me. I have not been in on this even close to the amount of time you've been in on this, and I like one of the things the points that you make, but and I've seen this with other people. All of the information we're talking about, people, is available to the public. There's nothing secretive in this. It's all what we call open source information. There is nothing hidden here. You don't have to have a security clearance. You don't have to have a top secret. The internet. You can find this information. So it's not like it's difficult for law enforcement to learn these things that we're talking about, which it really makes it embarrassing to think about. I'm kind of frankly shocked that since they are aware of the information you've shared, what they've chosen to do is entertain the concept of victimhood and the concept of Islamophobia, which, again, phobia means irrational fear. But if you have a reason to fear something, it's not irrational. So we're going to hear a whole bunch of reasons to fear concepts of Islamists who want Sharia. People who want Sharia here, I think we have a reason to fear.
Absolutely.
I think you agree with that. Yeah. One of the terms I've learned and use quite a lot now is Islamic gender apartheid. That alone is a reason for fear. The way that they treat their women. I will never stop being offended. How that goes. But let me get back into the questions. It gets even worse. So she, like I said, Ms. Hinners is an excellent researcher. She's got a lot more here. She tells us who the American Muslim Advisory Council, AMAC, is and what they have to do with the National Police Department training of their cadets. So could you please share about that?
Well, you can imagine, as a former, instructor for law enforcement and retired law enforcement, that this is really very frustrating because I don't believe they are getting the information that they need. But AMAC, the American Muslim Advisory Council, is a Muslim activist organization that was formed in 2011 here in Tennessee in opposition to an anti-terrorism material support bill, which they falsely labeled to be anti-Islam. Of course, it goes back, like you say, to victimhood. Unfortunately, our governor then, Governor Bill Haslam, legitimized AMAC by partnering them with, and you're going to love this, the Tennessee Department of Homeland Security. So that was something that really was the cream on the cake there. But the original theme, their original mission was to build bridges with law enforcement and other government agencies. They've kind of now gotten rid of that. They're more of a social justice type organization. They've morphed into this with other, like the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition. They're promoting the open borders, driver's licenses for illegals, voting rights for illegals. They really have morphed into something that they weren't in the very beginning. The other problem, and this doesn't, again, I mean, anybody can look this stuff up, but their founders and a lot of their current board members all have a relationship with some Muslim Brotherhood organization, whether it be ISNA, the Muslim Student Association, ICNA, which is the Islamic Circle of North America, and then our good friend CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. They say they're a civil rights organization. They're nothing but that. Their goal is to institute as many frivolous lawsuits about everything and anything that they possibly can. But anyway, AMAC has partnered in this particular case with Metro Human Resources to instruct law enforcement, but they also are instructing educators and students throughout Nashville. We know that Vanderbilt, Belmont University, which is Christian, a lot of Christian schools have sent their students there. I mean, AMAC has really made a name for itself, probably because they were legitimized by the governor.
Wow.
Well, huh?
Yeah. So as an educator, I'm interested. If you find anything done in the field of that they're claiming to be educational, let me know. I'm just gonna hope that God gives me the cash and stuff to head out to go see these things. There's one I wanted to go to in D.C. this week, and Andrew Herod covered, so I'm waiting to see his article on that one. But there's some new organizations out there that are claiming to be educational, and
it's scary. It's very scary.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you I've got stuff for you already because I think it was 2 years ago. It might have been last year, but I think it was 2 years ago when a middle school sent their public school students to this mosque under the guise of social studies, because it is in all the social studies books for seventh graders. And we have an audio of the entire 36 minutes of what this teacher was saying, but the 20 minutes out of 36 were all about, and this one quote will probably blow your mind, but she talks to the kids and she's telling them, when you leave here, you'll have a small part of your brain that'll be a compartment filled with Islam stuff. And so that was kind of, how is that, have a historical value? It's talking about, filling kids' heads with Islam. And that's pretty much what it was for the entire time, nothing but pure indoctrination rather than education. So I'll send that to you.
Oh, definitely. I keep track of that. I'm working on a project now that'll do more exposés, and that would actually fit in the next book I'm working on. So thank
I'll
you.
Send it to you.
I don't want to leave what you've been doing. I never asked, did you find any guest speakers for the mosque that would set off any warning bells?
Oh my gosh. The first one that came to mind is Sir Haj Wahaj. And if people aren't familiar with him, he's the imam of Brooklyn, New York's most radical mosque called Al Farouk, which was the home. I know we're giving people a lot of names and stuff, but just understand that Sir Haj Wahaj comes from the mosque of the Blind Sheikh. And if anybody doesn't remember, he was the mastermind of the first bombing of the World Trade Center back in 1993. So,
well, Sir Haj Wahaj did what it was his son that was the one that was the guy behind the mosque. Sorry, not the mosque, but the hidden what was that, Texas, or I can't remember where.
New Mexico and Alabama.
New Mexico and Alabama compounds where a baby was murdered. And
that's right.
They were planning to, and they were training children to be school shooters. How do you think I feel? I'm a teacher.
Yeah, really. But that's the sort of speaker that not only the ICN but a few other local mosques, have had on a pretty regular basis. And it's not just individuals, but it's heads of front groups. Nihat Awad, the head of CARE, has been here on several occasions. Whenever they have a problem like fighting the anti-terrorism, material support bill, there's a guy who supports Hamas who actually was a member of Hamas when it was the Islamic Association for Palestine. So, these are the people that are coming to this mosque, and this is the mosque that has opened its doors, and people, Christians and Jews, are flooding to them to learn about Islam. They're being indoctrinated through dawah, which is the proselytizing of Islam. And this is where our law enforcement and our children are being told that this is normal. So it's a big problem.
This is. I want to say it's really, really important that you're doing this. You're former law enforcement, and today you're a citizen. But law enforcement's our first line of defense against terrorism in this great country. Can you explain how destructive these influences could be to what these police officers are learning?
Well, at first I think that, people have to know that what we talk about isn't hate or fear, racism, bigotry, whatever. but it's about understanding literally who's in our backyard. And so I think, unfortunately, the Obama administration promoted the Muslim Brotherhood as this moderate political party that we shouldn't fear, but we should, form an alliance with. So it's not a moderate political party, but a violent organization. And their sole purpose is the Islamization of the world, but specifically the West. So, their agenda is to eventually undermine the system of the U.S. and to gain potential power, political power through the elections. And so this is what we're seeing. We're seeing Islamic law, and we know is completely and totally antithetical to our Constitution. And so, this philosophy, this ideology may seem very naive and innocent at first. A lot of people want to believe that it is a religion when, in fact, it's nothing but a political ideology, a theocratic political system. And yet people are saying, well, the Quran is very peaceful. And this is where it gets dangerous, because any book can be peaceful if you cherry pick, and they'll say the same about it being violent. But I think if you read their books and you read their law books, this is something that is exerting an influence on our minds of our children, our law enforcement, our military, our educators, and we're not paying attention to what's behind the curtain. So I think it's a great danger for anybody to be associating. If you and I went to and started, going to KKK meetings and associating with people like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, it's the same thing. Those are groups that you wouldn't dream of having your picture taken with or bringing your children to learn about an issue. And so they're doing the same thing. And it's very dangerous because they're making it look like we're the bad guys and they're the good guys. And like you said earlier, it goes along with the victim status. And they do a brilliant job at that.
I would love to see I've taken one of the books I recommend everybody to pick up and buy. It's a $50 book, so it's a little bit of expensive. But you pick up Reliance of the Traveler. That's Traveler with two L's. Yeah. It's Sharia in English. Now, here's the reason I tell people to buy it. You won't believe when you start reading this. So I met John Guandolo, and he encouraged me to read this. I talked to a few other people. They encouraged me to read this. I buy this book, and my mind is overwhelmed with just the first few pages, and I'm reading about the acceptance of pedophilia, and I'm just I just the whole concept makes me want my skin want to crawl. I'm very, very disgusted when I'm reading this to think everybody has told me, no, they're peaceful people. Oh, wait till you get to the section on jihad or the section on murder. Okay, section on murder. There is no penalty for a Muslim who kills a non-Muslim. There is nothing in Sharia. So if you hear Muslims that say they want Sharia, it is not wrong to also assume they want to be able to kill non-Muslims because that's part of Sharia. It's a scary thought.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't think people understand that their prophet, who they consider to be the perfect man and that they should imitate, was married to a 6-year-old and then consummated the marriage at 9. And so they will never say, they'll never condemn him because he is the perfect man, he is the Prophet Muhammad that they all have to follow and imitate. So they've gotten themselves into a real bind there. But you're right, in that law book. But the other thing I found interesting, too, in one of the sections in that book is how they don't have to go to daily prayers. Like, you see these lawsuits all the time. And I've urged employers, learn what the rules are. They can make up prayers at another time, but the sewer companies
it's right,
and
it's in there.
So.
It is in Reliance the Travelers. So this is the thing that actually should happen. This is why businesses should buy this book. Reliance the Traveler could save you from a lawsuit. The minute they want to sue you and say we need time for prayers, wait till you find what it says in this book. It says they're lying to you. So isn't that reason for dismissal?
I would think so.
I have no problem
know?
with firing somebody who tries to get me involved in a lawsuit by lying.
Yeah.
I have firing
Yeah.
somebody who does that. So,
I agree. It's a great book to
frivolous
have.
lawsuits.
Yeah. I
Wow.
know, and if they would just read, they would understand that this is their law book. This is Sharia law. There's a copy on my website, Paul, but it's not the full volume like the hardcover is. So, but if people wanted to take a quick look at it, it is on my website. I believe it's either under educational material or under documents. And I think people would be amazed at the violence that's promoted and the things against women, like the female genital mutilation that are promoted. That stuff is real. We don't make this stuff up. And this is happening anywhere you have a Muslim community. This is, happening in that community. So people wake up.
Yeah. So one of the news stories I'm going to be sharing later today has to do with the adulterous Ilhan, what's her name, refusing to stand against FGM. So female genital mutilation, she's okay with it. So again, adulterous Minnesotans, please hear this. The adulterous,
it's true.
the adulterous Ilhan, what's her name? So they have elected a Muslim who is an adulteress. I wonder how they feel about that. Great example of it.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
So let's make sure that they all get that message. I won't mention her name without saying it like that now. I owe Lori Hopkins Kavanaugh for giving me the what's her name part, but yeah, I think I'm learning how important messaging is from liberals. So I'm putting this one together. So if we all say that adulterous Ilhan, what's her name? That's how we message to Minnesota. That's what you wanted.
Yeah, really. Minnesota is a mini Mogadishu at this point, unfortunately.
I have been in St. Cloud, and that was a couple years ago, and it was mind-numbing then for me. You could not go any place in St. Cloud without seeing somebody in a burqa or hijab, or in some cases fully a full niqab. It was kind of mind-numbing to see that and consider this. Minnesota's not. It's not like New York City. It's not. A lot of this St. Cloud is. I think the tallest building is usually about 3 or 4 stories at the highest. It's not a big, huge city. And you go there, and they actually have a place called Little Mogadishu. It's a market. And on Fridays, after the Friday prayers, that parking lot is so filled. It's you sit there wondering, what are all these? Okay, and they're all guys there. There's no women. They're all guys getting together afterwards.
That's a sign right there.
Yeah. So I got a good tour of what was happening while I was there. It was shocking. There are some people aware of what's going on. I wish there were more like you and me that could stand up. Unfortunately, it's kind of scary not seeing that.
I know.
I did ask, is there, maybe you answered this, has the Nashville Police Department responded in any way to the research that you have given?
Absolutely not. They have not. I do feel, though, that once their police officers in general, not just Metro officers, but in general, learn about my background and realize that I only deal with facts. That's why I have not been sued by CARE yet. They're more comfortable being supportive of me. So I have kept a lot of contacts with those that I met in classes throughout the country. But when you say Islam or Muslims around a lot of higher ups in police departments, they get a little nervous. So, but no, they never have. I don't expect that they would. I certainly would offer training to them. It was always free training to begin with. But the sad part is it would never be accredited through post. I'm sure they would not. They would take it as probably anti-Islam. But anybody can reach out to me and certainly ask me for help or for private, kind of workshops, and we'll go from there. Anybody.
So why don't you tell people how they can get a hold of you and support your work, because you do a lot of good work.
My website is dailyrollcall.com, and there is a link there to send me an email. I can be found on Facebook under my name, Cathy Hinners. I am on Twitter under Daily Roll Call. And again, my book, though, is available on Amazon. It's called Muslim Brotherhood, Threat in Our Backyard. And I'm working on a second book, but my brain has kind of come to a standstill. But yeah, if anybody wanted to get, through me through the website, they certainly can. So I appreciate that.
This is kind of mind-numbing stuff. This is the truth is that all this is happening. And because Cathy's staying abreast of this information, you guys can know what's happening. And I want to say thank you for the hard work that you're doing. Research is not easy, people. Sometimes it's kind of hits you in the face like you already know something. But the strange joy that we have in doing research is we find something we don't know and we want to learn more. And when we find that little bit more, we kind of sit there and share it. But it's kind of, you sit there like you find that little bit more, you're like, whoa. And there's a little bit of joy in that. I'll admit that. There's a little bit of joy in that. It's kind of exciting to find something other people don't have, but it's work. And
it is a lot of work, sure is.
Yeah.
And I came here to retire. I left New York, came to Tennessee to retire, and it's it's a mission that I've been put on, and I believe in it. And I appreciate though you having me on and being able to share information, and hopefully we've had some Nashville officers and maybe some leadership listen in and kind of get an awareness of what's happening up in Nashville. So they certainly can reach out to me. I do not ever divulge who reaches out to me. That goes back to being a cop. I know how to keep things confidential, and so all information is kept confidential. And that's that. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you. We'll definitely have to have you back again. I've been following your work for quite a while, and I want to say thank you for joining us and letting us share in your wisdom. God bless.
Right.
Your work is important, and I believe God will bless you. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Have a good night.
Wow. She's one of those powerhouses. The information she has is mind-numbing. To think that the Nashville Police Department didn't have the information is kind of it's unacceptable to say that. Again, this information is public knowledge. She didn't share anything secretive. She didn't say anything hard to find. And this is the stuff that bothers me when I find this stuff. How can I find this stuff and nobody else is doing this? I had said last week that I wanted to read a little bit about what I have been doing.